And our gathering music today is the chant Ancient Mother, accompanied by slides of artwork of goddesses.
Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Pam, and I'm one of the trustees. I'd love to welcome you to our service today. Wherever we're happy you're here, wherever here is for you today, and enjoy. Thank you much. Thanks for spending some of your Sunday with us.
Our opening words today come from Hildegard of Bingen. Glance at the sun, see the moon and the stars. Gaze at the beauty of earth's greenings. Now think, what delight God gives us. With all these things, all nature is at the hands of humankind. We are to work with it, for without it, we cannot survive. Hildegard of Bingen. Julaine has a special piece for us now.
So this is a chant that Hildegard wrote in the 1100s. And the artwork that you'll see that goes along with it is one of her paintings. And it's called The Changing of the Seasons is the painting. The chant is called O Frondens Virga, which means, O branch coming into leaf. This is myself, Olivia, and Deanne.
We have a story for you. This story, Seeds of Change, is about Wangari Maathai. Any of you heard of her before? Yes, she won the Nobel Peace Prize in the early 2000s for her work. But this book is by Jen Cullerton Johnson and illustrated by Sonia Lynn Sadler. Beautiful pictures. Come, Wangari's mother called. She beckoned her young daughter over to a tall tree with a wide, smooth trunk and a crown of green oval leaves. Feel, her mother whispered. Wangari spread her small hands over the tree's trunk. She smoothed her fingers over the rough bark. This is the magumo, her mother said. It is home to many. It feeds many too. She snapped off a wild fig from a low branch and gave it to her daughter. Wangari ate the delicious fruit, just as geckos and elephants did. High in the tree, birds chirped in their nests. The branches bounced with jumping monkeys. Our people, the Kikuyu of Kenya, believe that our ancestors rest in the tree's shade, her mother explained. Wangari wrapped her arms around the trunk as if hugging her great-grandmother's spirit. She promised never to cut down the tree. Each year, the mugamo grew, and so did Wangari. As the oldest girl in her family, she had many chores. Every day, she fetched water, clear and sweet, from the river. In the rainy season, she planted sweet potatoes, millet, and beans. When the sun shone brightly in the dry season, she shooed the chickens into the shade. Sometimes when her brother Nderitu returned from school, he and Wangari played among the arrowroot plants by the stream, where thousands of eggs hatched into tadpoles and tadpoles turned into frogs. During those times, Nderitu told Wangari what he had learned in his classes. Plants give air for people to breathe, he said. 20 divided by 2 is 10. There are 7 great seas to sail. Wangari listened as still as a tree, but her mind swirled with curiosity like the currents in the stream. Even though she knew few Kikuyu girls who could read, Wangari dreamed of going to school and learning, just like her brother. I must go to school, she told him. You will, he promised. Nderitu talked to their parents. Why doesn't Wangari go to school? He asked. Wangari's parents knew she was smart and a hard worker. Although it was unusual for a girl to be educated, they decided to send her to school. They knew she would not disappoint them. After some time to arrange for fees and supplies, Wangari's mother came to her. You are going to school, she told her daughter. Wangari grinned widely and hugged her mother. Thank you, she cried. I will make you proud. Wangari walked the long road to a one-room schoolhouse with walls made of mud, a floor of dirt, and a roof of tin. In time, she learned to copy her letters and trace numbers. Wangari's letters soon made words, and her words made sentences. She learned how numbers could be added and subtracted, multiplied and divided. Animals and plants, she discovered, were like human beings in many ways. They needed air, water, and nourishment too. When Wangari finished elementary school, she was 11 years old. Her mind was like a seed rooted in rich soil, ready to grow. Wangari wanted to continue her education, but to do so, she would have to leave her village and move to the capital city of Nairobi. Wangari had never been farther than her valley's ridge. She was scared. Go, her mother said. She picked up a handful of earth and placed it gently into her daughter's hand. Where you go, we go. Wangari was sad to leave, but she knew that what her mother said was true. Wherever Wangari went, so went her family, her village, and her Kikuyu ways. She kissed her family and said goodbye to the Mugumo tree, remembering her promise always to protect it. Wangari's new life in the city amazed her. Skyscrapers towered above her head, not trees. People rushed through the streets like river water over stones. At school, she lived with other girls like her, all trying to weave their village customs with new city ones. At night, when the girls slept, Wangari dreamed of home and the sweet figs of the mugumo tree. Her dreams reminded her to honor her Kikuyu tradition of respecting all living things. And now Julaine has summarized several pages. Wangari graduates from school, wins a scholarship, and goes to an American university to study biology. She learns from women professors that women can do anything, even if it hadn't been done before. She eventually returns to Kenya to teach at the University of Nairobi and started working for equal rights so that female scientists would be treated with the same respect as male scientists. Wangari watched sadly as her government sold more and more land to big foreign companies that cut down forests for timber and to clear land for coffee plantations. Native trees such as cedar and acacia vanished. Without trees, birds had no place to nest. Monkeys lost their swings. Tired mothers walked miles for firewood. When Wangari visited her village, she saw that the Kikuyu custom of not chopping down the mugumo trees had been lost. No longer held in place by tree roots, the soil streamed into the rivers. The water that had been used to grow maize, bananas, and sweet potatoes turned to mud and dried up. Many families went hungry. Wangari could not bear to think of the land being destroyed. Now married and the mother of 3 children, she worried about what would happen to all the mothers and children who depended on the land. We must do something, Wangari said. Wangari had an idea as small as a seed, but as tall as a tree that reaches for the sky. Harabi, let's work together, she said to her country women, mothers like her. Wangari dug deep into the soil, a seedling by her side. We must plant trees. Many women listened. Many planted seedlings. Some men laughed and sneered. Planting trees was women's work, they said. Others complained that Wangari was too outspoken, with too many opinions and too much education for a woman. Wangari refused to listen to those who criticized her. Instead, she told them, those trees you are cutting down today were not planted by you, but by those who came before. You must plant trees that will benefit the community to come, like a seedling with sun, good soil, and abundant rain. The roots of our future will bury themselves in the ground, and a canopy of hope will reach the sky. Wangari traveled to villages, towns, and cities with saplings and seeds, shovels and hoes, At each place she went, women planted rows of trees that looked like green belts across the land. Because of this, they started calling themselves the Green Belt Movement. We might not change the big world, but we can change the landscape of the forest, she said. One tree turned into 10, 10 to 100, 100 to 1 million, all the way up to 30 million planted trees. Kenya grew green again. Birds nested in new trees. Monkeys swung on branches. Rivers filled with clean water. Wild figs grew heavy on mugumo branches. Mothers fed their children maize, bananas, and sweet potatoes until they could eat no more. And another synopsis, Wangari's tree planting activities and her activism upset some people in corporations, and she is arrested and jailed by corrupt police officials. While she is in jail, she interacts with other prisoners, learning their stories and teaching them of her movement. She is eventually freed thanks to the efforts of friends all over the world. She realizes that in order to help her country and country women, she will have to leave Kenya again. Back to our story. Wangari began to travel, telling her story to teachers, presidents, farmers, ambassadors, and school children all over the world. She dug in the dirt and planted seedlings and spoke about women's rights. With everyone she met, she shared the seeds of change. In time, Kenya changed. More people listened to Wangari's message, calling her the Mama Miti, mother of trees. They wanted her to lead them into Kenya's new democracy. Wangari was elected to Kenya's parliament and became Minister of the Environment. Still, she did not stop planting trees. In 2004, Wangari won the most prestigious peace prize in the world, the Nobel Peace Prize. It had never before been awarded to an African woman or an environmentalist. Standing in front of an audience of people from around the world, far from her village, Wangari remembered her girlhood lesson of the mugumo. She understood that persistence, patience, and commitment to an idea as small as a seed, but as tall as a tree that reaches for the sky, must be planted in every child's heart. Young people, you are our hope and our future, she said. And then, as she had done so many times before, Wangari planted a tree. Now we'll have the affirmation.
Why are we here? Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve the needs of all beings, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with the source of our being.
This is the time for our offering for the ongoing work of this congregation and food for the Family Center.
Good morning.
Morning.
Next, we have a reading, a poem by Becky Hemsley, Talking to the Wild. She sat at the back, and they said she was shy. She led from the front, and they hated her pride. They asked her advice and then questioned her guidance. They branded her loud, then were shocked by her silence. When she shared no ambition, they said it was sad. She told them her dreams, and they said she was mad. They told her they'd listen, then covered their ears and gave her a hug whilst they laughed at her fears. And she listened to all of it, thinking she should be the girl they told her to be best as she could. But one day she asked what was best for herself, instead of trying to please everyone else. So she walked to the forest and stood with the trees. She heard the wind whisper and dance with the leaves. And she spoke to the willow, the elm, and the pine. And she told them what she'd been told time after time. She told them she felt she was never enough. She was either too little or far, far too much, too loud or too quiet, too fierce or too weak, too wise or too foolish, too bold or too meek. Then she found a small clearing surrounded by firs, and she stopped and she heard what the trees said to her. And she sat there for hours, not wanting to leave, for the forest said nothing. It just let her breathe. So let us take a few moments of silence also to breathe.
I invite you to gently come back to the sanctuary and to our space that we've created for our service today. As many of you know, that the third Sunday of the month, the Worship and Arts Committee has promised to honor the Great Turning, our pledge to raising all of our awareness and our actions to transition from a harsh, industrial-minded society to one that is aware and honors our planet. So a number of us are going to talk to you today about some amazing earth holders. Of course, we've already begun with our beautiful stories and some of our quotes and our beautiful poem. Thank you, Hallie. I'm going to talk to you today about Saint Hildegard Bingen. She lived during the High Middle Ages. She was born in 1098 and she lived until 1179, 82 years. Matthew Fox brought her back to a lot of our sort of Western mind about what her work was, and he calls her one of the great creation-centered mystics. And this is a painting of her. Thank you, Julaine. She was multi-talented and prolific. She was the abbess of a Benedictine abbey in Germany. She was an influential preacher and a healer, a scientist, a composer, a theologian, an artist, a poet, a medical writer, and a practitioner. She coined the term, and this is Latin, so I might say it wrong, the term viriditas, which means greening power. And she believed that this was our connection with creativity. It is said that she wrote more surviving chants than any other composer from the entire Middle Ages. And we did have, and here, one of those wonderful chants. Thank you, Julaine, for your beautiful music and bringing this to us today. So she wrote both music and words, which was pretty unusual for a woman at that time. And she also supervised miniature illuminations, liturgical dramas, and morality plays. She was the 10th child in what was called a lower noble family. And she shared herself that she had experienced visions at a very young age. She was offered at the age of eight, to a community of women that was attached to Benedictine monastery. And that went on to become, of course, the abbey that she was, in fact, the abbess at. So 14 years old, she was enclosed in this community. And she went on to have so many visions. I'm going to read you just a little bit of a letter that she wrote when she was 77 years old. She had a direct message that she needed to write about her visions, because she had sort of only shared it with her own community for a while. So here's the letter in which she describes her experience, what she called umbra viventis lucis, which means the living reflection of the living light. From my early childhood, before my bones, nerves, and veins were fully strengthened, I have always seen this vision in my soul, even to the present time, when I am more than 70 years old. In this vision, my soul, as God would have it, rises up high into the vault of heaven and into the changing sky, and spreads itself out among different peoples. Although they are far away from me in distant lands and places, and because I see them in this way in my soul, I observe them in accord with the shifting of clouds and other created things. I do not hear them with my outward ears, nor do I perceive them by the thoughts of my own heart, or by any combination of my 5 senses, but in my soul alone. While my outward eyes are open, So I have never fallen prey to ecstasy in the visions, but I see them wide awake, day and night. The light which I see thus is not spatial, but it is far, far brighter than a cloud which carries the sun. I can measure neither height nor length nor breadth in it, and I call it the reflection of living light. And as the sun, the moon, and the stars appear in water, so writings, sermons, virtues, and certain human actions take form for me and gleam. Take form for me and gleam. Thank you, Hildegard. Deb, our wonderful Deb Diebold, is going to give us a little information now. So I'll let you take that away, Deb.
I'm going to talk about, oops, thank you, Anne-Marie. I'll be talking about Dr. Vandana Shiva. And we have a photo for you so you can see her.
Not that one.
The next one down. Yeah, there she is. Dr. Shiva, who is a quantum physicist, an environmentalist, a feminist, an author, an activist, and a seed saver. These lists of accomplishments of women are continuing. She's had an extraordinary life. She was born in 1952, shortly after India's independence and partition, which took place in 1947. And then Gandhi's assassination was in 48. So these were really profound times in India. She was born to parents who were both well educated, and they were both activists in the anti-caste movement, which was very meaningful and profound during those years in India. Her parents both believed in education for women, which was pretty uncommon back then, just as we saw with the story with Wangari Maathai. It was difficult for girls to go to school, but her parents were absolutely, unquestionably wanted her to get an education. Her parents chose the last name Shiva because it was caste neutral. And as I said, they were part of the anti-caste movement. Her father had been in the military and was then a forester, and her mother left a senior government job to become a farmer. So during Vandana's childhood, she spent much time traveling through the woods on foot and on horseback. Along with her father, she saw this forest as a source of abundance, diversity, beauty, and peace. These things had a big impact on her life. As India turned to the extractive methods, much as what happened in Kenya in the story that Sharon read earlier, women formed the Chipko movement. It was an extension of the Gandhian movement to save the trees and to promote traditional and regenerative harvesting methods. With Vandana's background, it was natural for her to join in. Although she went off to college, she volunteered with the Chipko movement every summer and school vacation. And Chipko was largely a women's movement, although some men did participate. Again, just as we've heard with other individuals today, it was usually the women who took care of the trees and the agriculture. Vandana says women and indigenous communities, the excluded of the industrial world, are the real caretakers of biodiversity related knowledge. And that comes from her book, Terra Vita, which came out in 2022. After she went to college in India, she went on to Canada to get a PhD in quantum physics. She also continued to learn more and more about the environmental impacts of extraction and pollution, and took a holistic, multidisciplinary approach to research. In 1993, she received the Right Livelihood Award, which is often called the Alternative Nobel Prize, for creating a new paradigm for research and working in novel ways with communities. In 1984, the chemical disaster at Bhopal had a tremendous impact on her. She thought, why had agriculture become like a war? This, she states, is a problem of the mechanistic, reductionist, Cartesian industrial paradigm. We've seen this well illustrated in the story. You know, just plow everything down, cut it down, poison it, get rid of the wild things, get rid of the ecosystem. Dr. Shiva worked against so-called free trade, such as the GATT, the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, and the World Trade Organization. Reflecting on Gandhi's use of the spinning wheel to represent his movement for independence from Britain, Vandana came up with the idea of using a seed as a symbol for the modern movement she helped form against the industrialization of agriculture. In the 1990s, she formed the organization Navdanya, which means 9 seeds, to protect the biological and cultural diversity. Vandana and Navdanya are too much alike. The organization created over 100 community seed banks, and they have demonstrated that the free exchange of seeds among farmers, she would say perhaps peasant farmers or indigenous farmers in India, have led to resilience. Indian farmers have developed many heirloom varieties of millet, dal, amaranth, and other seeds with flood-resistant, saline-resistant, and drought-resistant properties. She now continues her work against GMOs, genetically modified organisms, or genetic engineering, and pesticides. She says, having devoted my life to the defense of the intrinsic worth of all species, the idea of life forms, seeds, and biodiversity being reduced to corporate inventions and hence corporate property was abhorrent to me. And that also came from the book Terra Vita. Vandana has written a number of books. I've read 3 or 4 of them. She has one where she describes all the work she did in India to help get laws passed and defended against the commoditization of seeds and the use of genetic engineering in India. Many of these laws have been successful, although some of them in particular about cotton have been undermined, and genetically engineered cotton seeds have basically taken over the cotton industry, the cotton farming and industry in India, and have led to many farmer suicides. And she continues to work against this. In recent years, she's made several trips to Vermont. She has deep connections with Vermont. She's met with leaders of the non-GMO movement here, as we have worked to and actually passed a law requiring the label of genetically engineered seeds and ingredients in our food. Unfortunately, this law was superseded by the federal government. I was honored to hear her speak in person at the Vermont Law School 5 or 6 years ago when she was on a tour of the state led by my and Sharon's friend, Kat Buxton of the Vermont Healthy Soils Coalition. This was really exciting. I mean, really a highlight of my life to hear her speak in person. She has connections with Nova Vermont, Soil for Climate, Real Organic, which was begun in Vermont by a local tomato farmer, Rural Vermont, and other Vermont groups. And she has visited Cedar Circle Farm in Thetford, which is about 45 minutes an hour north of Springfield. She also spoke at the 2019 Sterling College commencement, which was held at the State House during another of her Northeast tours. And Sterling College is an agricultural college. It's in Craftsbury, Vermont. It's a beautiful place. On her tour, she was calling for a poison-free food and farming by 2030 and still works toward that goal. I wanted to give a quote from another woman leader. It was not written specifically about Vandana Shiva, but it sums up what she stands for. This quote is from Pat McCabe, known in her own language, translated as Woman Stand Shining. She is Diné, which many people refer to as Navajo, and I think a couple other tribes. And Woman Stand Shining says, nobody has any right to get in between what Mother Earth has to give her child. That would be violating spiritual law. That is how Vandana Shiva has lived her life and continues to live her life. And that is what I have to say. And we are on to some words about Joanna Macy. I think we see a lot of recurring themes here in these stories, poems, readings, and so forth, and talks. So back to Anne Marie.
Thank you, Deb. Very inspiring. So the Worship and Arts Committee, we had so much inspiration when we thought about earth holders in honor of Women's History Month. We just kept coming up with these amazing women, and just had to sort of put a cap on it at some point. But I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the work of Joanna Rogers Macy. And put her there. Here's her picture. Thank you, Julaine. A beautiful woman. She is now in her 94th year. And she's known as an environmental activist. She's an author and a scholar of Buddhism, general systems theory, and deep ecology. She has authored 12 books. And the one that she's most known for is this one, Coming Back to Life. Practices to reconnect our lives and our world. And in this lovely book, which has actually been, as they say, sort of like updated again and again, there are all these wonderful practices, because part of her philosophy as she lives her life and does her work is to help us with the suffering that can come in our awareness of the suffering of Earth. And so she goes into the world, she travels internationally, and she does all these wonderful teachings and lectures and workshops that hold and help us hold that suffering and also give us strength for this work. ways to renew ourselves. Just an amazing, amazing woman. Let's see what else I wanted to say. Yes, she was the one that I really actually started to follow and gather some of her writings and her work when we decided our theme would be about the Great Turning. She was very inspirational and the startup of the Great Turning Initiative. And of course, she did join forces with others like, David Corton that we've talked a lot about. So her definition of the Great Turning is that it deals with the transformation from an industrial growth society to a sustainable civilization. I get so excited I can't pronounce my words. She also has written, as I said, 12 books. One of them is called Mutual Causality. So if you're very interested in Buddhist philosophy and the way that it interconnects with systems theory, that's the book you want to read. It's not an easy read, but one piece that came out of it that I'll just share with you. She says that as she goes through life, she thinks about this little mantra. Mantras can be inspiring. Today, am I a stone or am I a flame? Am I a stone or am I a flame? So she's still doing lectures and workshops and trainings internationally. And she calls it the work that reconnects. And she's still on faculty of 3 graduate schools in San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm going to read you a quote from her about compassion. And I would have to say this is one of a very, very inspiring teacher. We are capable of suffering with our world. And that is the true meaning of compassion. It enables us to recognize our profound interconnectedness with all beings. Don't ever apologize for crying for the trees burning in the Amazon or over the waters polluted from mines in the Rockies. Don't apologize for the sorrow, the grief, and rage that you feel. It is a measure of your humanity and your maturity. It is a measure of your open heart. And as your heart breaks open, there will be room for the world to heal. That is what is happening as we see people honestly confronting the sorrows of our times. I have one more piece I'd like to share today. This is an example of some of the work that she does in her workshops. And it comes from this book, World as Lover, World as Self. The 3 beings. We call first on the beings of the past. Be with us now, all you who have gone before. You, our ancestors and teachers, who walked and loved and faithfully tended this earth. Be present to us now so that we may carry on the legacy you bequeathed us. Aloud and silently in our hearts, we say your names. We see your faces. We call also on the beings of the present. All you who live and work on this endangered planet. All you with whom we share this brink of time. Be with us now. Fellow humans and brothers and sisters of our species, help us open to our collective will and wisdom. Aloud and silently, we say your names, we see your faces. Lastly, we call on the beings of the future. All you who will come after us on this earth, be with us now. All you who are waiting to be born in the ages to come, it is for your sakes too that we work to heal our world. We cannot picture your faces. We cannot say your names. You have none yet. but we feel the reality of your claim on life. It helps us to be faithful in the task that must be done, so that there will be for you, as there was for our ancestors, blue sky, fruitful land, clear waters. Thank you, Joanna Macy, for your work. Sharon will bring our attention now to another wonderful earth holder. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie, for those words into Joanna Macy's life. What an inspiration. I'll tell you quickly that Kitsy, our former minister, shared with me that she did a workshop down at the Rose Center with Joanna Macy for a week, and was so moved and talked with Joanna afterwards. And Joanna said, "Here's my private phone number in case you need to call." And Kitsy shared that she called her once. I can't remember what it was, but it was a joke that about the earth and so on, that she thought might bring some needed levity. So I am going to talk to you about Leah Penniman, and Julaine has a picture of her. Look at this. Can you turn the captioning off for a sec? So look at that woman. She's the youngest of the women that we've talked about. She was born in 1980. And look at the power in that, with her hoe there and that great smile. She was born her mother was African-American and Haitian-American. She had a white father. That's all it says about him. Her mother was a doctor, reverend, and an activist. And Leah grew up in Massachusetts, and in Boston. She started farming at the age of 16 in what was a food desert in that area of Boston. And later on, she was living in Albany and had a child and was on WIC, and realized that that was a food desert as well. And some years later, she bought 72 acres in Grafton, New York. It's not that far away. Vandana Shiva is the whole on the other side of the world. But Leah Penniman bought this land and founded Soul Fire Farm, which is teaching BIPOC people of color how to farm using organic and ancestral ways of farming. I follow her on Instagram, and I am just blown away by what they do. They have all kinds of programs, immersion for people to come and do 50 hours of farming. They're teaching people of color, they're reconnecting them with the skill of growing food. And they've taught hundreds of farmers. I look, and every once in a while I'll see a white face. They're wanting all races to come together, but what's missing is that Black knowledge and connectedness to the land, which, you know, slaves worked the land, sharecroppers worked the land, but then they moved to northern cities, many, and lost that ability to that knowledge. So now she's reconnecting in a very powerful way. I really encourage you to look her up, or look up Soul Fire Farm and see. And I hope someday to go visit the farm. It's not that far. It's near the Peace Pagoda in Grafton, which I went to many years ago with Bob Staley Mays. But anyway, yes, so that's it. That's all I'll say about Leah, but I really encourage you to look further into it. We have an opportunity now to hear from Anne Marie's daughter, T, who is going to share a song. Take it away, T.
Thank you, Sharon. Hello, everybody. What an honor and pleasure to be gathered with you today. I am absolutely in love with this service. Thank you for bringing the accomplishments, the work, the heart of so many of these incredible women that you've brought to us today in story and poem and pictures. It's just incredible. So thank you for putting this together, and thank you to the Worship and Arts Committee for inviting me to share a couple songs with you today. I'm going to do a medley of 2 folk songs that were taught to me by my teacher, song teacher, Lainey Goodman, who has sadly passed away. She's left our earthly plane this year in January. And she was an elder, a teacher, just an inspirational powerhouse of a woman herself, worked for queer and gay rights, equal rights throughout her life. And she's also a ceremonialist, a singer, and a drummer, and traveled all over this country, but especially around New England. She resided in Massachusetts during the latter half of her life, just bringing music to the people and bringing the people to what she called the mother drum, which was a giant drum that 4 people would play at once. And this was a way to connect us back to our roots, back to connection with the earth, with each other, and with the earth through the drum, through the heartbeat drum, to represent. The drum was sort of a representative of the heart of the Mother Earth. And so these 2 songs taught to me by Lainey, my beloved song teacher, I bring to you in a medley today. And yes, just felt they were very appropriate because they are honoring not only women, but also the earth and earth holders. And also it is a call for us to sort of rise to the time now, the needs now that the earth and humanity have for our good hearts and our bright minds to come together and create spaces of healing and of love, much like this congregation that gathers in love. And so without further ado, women of the world are gathering together. We're creating a world not afraid of feeling. We're initiating healing. So rise up, 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 rise up. Women of the world are gathering together. We're creating a world not afraid of feeling. We're initiating healing. Rise up, 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 rise up. Women of the world are gathering together. We're creating a world not afraid of feeling. We're initiating healing. Rise up, 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 rise up. People of the earth tribe, rise up. People of the earth tribe, rise up now. People of the earth tribe, rise up. People of the earth tribe, rise up now. Some say namaste, some say om taquiasin, some say om, some say shalom. We all call Mother Earth our home protector. We the earth tribe, rise up. People of the earth tribe, rise up now. People of the earth tribe, rise up. People of the earth tribe, rise up now. Some say namaste, some say om atakwiasin, some say om, some say shalom. We all call Mother Earth our home. Protect her, respect her. You got to love, don't neglect her. Protect her, respect her. You got to love, don't neglect her. Protect her, yeah, respect her. Woo! You got to love, don't neglect her. Protect her, yeah, respect her. You got to love, don't neglect her. Blessings of the day. Rise up. Love that Mama Earth and each other. Thank you.
Thank you, T. So I have a couple of quotes, perhaps one or two, for the closing words. This is by Joanna Macy, Grace and the Great Turning. When you act on behalf of something greater than yourself, you begin to feel it acting through you with a power greater than your own. This is grace. Today, as we take risks for the sake of something greater than our separate individual lives, we are feeling graced by other beings and by Earth itself. Those with whom and on whose behalf we act give us strength and eloquence and staying power we didn't know we had. We just need to practice knowing that and remembering that we are sustained by each other in the web of life. Our true power comes as a gift, like grace, because in truth, it is sustained by others. If we practice drawing on the wisdom and beauty and strengths of our fellow human beings and our fellow species, we can go into any situation and trust that the courage and intelligence required will be supplied. And the final quote, even though we're running over, I couldn't decide, so I'm doing both. This is by Hildegard von Bingen. Humankind, full of all creative possibilities, is God's work. Humankind alone is called to assist God. Humankind is called to co-create. With nature's help, humankind can set into creation all that is necessary and life-sustaining.